Hello and welcome to iteration 3. So now that we have a project set up, it's time to construct a color using only a red component. Again, we apply the app development process in all our iterations. So it's kind of a cyclic thing. So iteration 3, construct a color using red component. So we apply through the 3 steps: problem formulation, solution formulation, and solution implementation. So in the problem formulations, we define the scope and we define the testing scenarios. So the scope of our app is enable the user to enter a value for the red component of the color. This value is between 0 and 1. Then construct and display the color to the user. Right? That's basically it, right? How are we going to test this? So we have variety of tests actually, because we want to test that the user will enter a value within the range of 0 to 1 and we display a color. So if the user enter a value between that is 0, meaning there is no red color, and I'm only using red, so there's no green, there's no alpha, I should get no color or the black color. If the user enter 1 and I don't have any red and any green or any blue, I should get the full red color. If the user entered something in between, I should get a lighter variation of the red color. So I can actually at least have 3 tests. One when the user enters 0, another when the user enters 1, a third when the user enters, let's say, 50% or 60%. So we'll say testing scenario 1, user enters 0 as the red component. Observe the app displays the color black. Testing scenario 2, user enters 1 as the red component. Observe the app displays the color red. Then testing scenario 3, user enters, let's say, a value in between 50.5 for instance, and then observe the app displays lighter color red. So that's what we want to do. That's how we're going to test it. So how actually are we going to go about creating it? Think about the data, the user interface, and the controller, the logic. So the data, we have the red component of the color. So the red component is a decimal number between 0 and 1. So that's the data. How are we going to represent this data in our app? We're going to use a type called float. The float type is a standard type, data type. There are several of them, and they represent the size in memory that you can store, that you can allocate to data storage. So the memory is divided into bytes. So you buy a phone, they tell you you want to have 16 gigabytes. A giga is like 10 to the power of 9. It's like 9 zeros. So not just 1 byte, it's 1,000 million bytes. And 16 of those. So how many bytes should I allocate in memory for a decimal number? Well, the iOS, as any other language, they define preset sizes and you as a developer, you choose the one that is suitable for you. So float is one of those. We call it data type. So we call this data type, which basically represent the size in memory to allocate for the data. The float can, and the size can also represent the range of numbers that you can allocate for float. So for a float, it's like minus some large million number to plus some large million number. And you can, anywhere in between can go in a float. Every language or the platform can have different definitions. Sometimes every hardware can have different definitions. Anyway, so we have a lit component that's a number, and we're gonna save it as a float. What other, and this will be entered by the user. So it's a variable, meaning that I don't know what that number will be. When we design the app, we have no idea what the user will enter. So we call this variable, a variable. It can change. Then we also need to provide a blue component, which is the same as decimal number, but I actually know the value. It's 0. Because I'm not using any blue component here. So this we call it constant. So that's constant because I know at the beginning of the app that this is going to be 0. At the beginning, I'm talking here this iteration. Now, I'm not thinking about the full project. I'm only thinking about iteration 3. So likewise, the green component, which also will be 0 as constant. And finally, the alpha component, which will be 1, and it will also constant. Why 1? Because if you make alpha 0, you're not going to see anything. It's transparency. 1 meaning full opaque, so you can see the full color. Then I have another one, which is the color itself. I'm going to mix all of those together and create a new data. And that new data also needs memory. So the color, we will represent that in using a library, and that library is called UI color. And UI color has its own way of initializing a color, and we'll see that when we learn about the UI color class. Now we go to the view. So the view talks about user interface components. So I need just one component to allow the user to enter a variable. So I'm going to use the UI slider. Why the UI slider? It's a perfect component when you have user inputting data within a particular range. So since I know the minimum and the maximum for the data, the UI slider is perfect. This way you can control the user input and guarantee that it will be within the range. There's another component which is a text field, which I believe we will use in the next project, which allow the user to enter anything. So you don't want to use it if you already have a very set range. So I have a UI slider, and then I also have UI view. The UI view is a rectangle area. The app has a UI view, which is the white area of your screen. I'm going to add another one on top of that, another rectangle area. So we'll do that, and that's how the user will interact with them. So the user will move the slider. So how the user will interact, user will move the slider to select a value between the minimum of 0 and maximum of 1. So finally, the controller. The controller represents, so we're going to need here custom controller. So we need a custom controller that is attached to the screen, and the single view template already provides us with that custom controller. So we will use that, which is the view controller.swift. Then we need to attach an action. So we need a function. We need a function to that will be responsible for this constructing and displaying the color. Maybe we can call it display color. And this function will do 3 steps. Step 1 will read the number that the user entered. step 2 will construct a color object using the components, and the components will be the red value that is entered and the other constant values that you have, and then we'll assign the new color to the background property of the UI view object. All right. So as you can see from this, that the controller and the user interface component are exchanging data. The user interface component slider has the number, and the controller need to read that number. The user interface has the view, and the controller need to put the background, set the background property, or put the color in the background property of that view. The user moves the slider knob, and that generates an action. We need to trigger that action with the controller. So we need to actually connect outlets and actions between the view and the controller as well. So in the solution implementation, we follow these steps. So the first step, and you can take it in any order you want. So add a UI slider to the screen and set its attributes. Then step 2, add a UI view object to the screen and set its attributes. Good. Then we need to connect the UI slider to the controller as an outlet to exchange the data. Then I need to connect the UI slider to the controller as an action to trigger a function, to trigger the display color function. Then I need to connect the UI view object to the, actually you may say, why do I call UI view object? This is also an object. Anything that you add becomes an instance of its design and an object. And I'll talk probably in a new module on what is an object. Connect the UI view to the controller as an outlet. Then we need to implement the algorithm of the display color function. Those 3 steps, which means we need to write Swift instructions. To process the 3 steps. And then after that we do the testing. Test. Sounds good? Alright, this become too long, so I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna make the implementation of this iteration in a new video.